Okay, so the Sens find a way to win a tight 2-1 game in regulation, and there hasn't really been too many games where they've held on and not hit the empty net this year, but that was the case last night. Lineup notes, so everything stays exactly the same from the 4-2 defeat against Vancouver on Saturday night, and DJ Smith really not wanting to change up this lineup too much. So let's talk about the game. Okay, so this is a really big game for Vancouver. Obviously, they're a bit of a ways away from a final playoff spot, but they have a lot of games in hand on Montreal. So if they can win these games in hand, they'll put themselves in a pretty good spot. But it really didn't look like they wanted it too much early on. I thought they played okay, Vancouver, but I thought Ottawa, more than matched them at their playing level early on in the game. And the Sens would actually appear to have scored a goal by Colin White after a great move by Thomas Chabot. It would get called back though. Braden Holtby gets bumped by Chabot as he was cutting through after he made the initial play. They would call it off. Game remains tied at 0. And my thoughts on it, I know some people were saying, oh, it should have counted and stuff. I don't know. I mean, that's a bit of a tough one to say, yeah, it should have counted right out. I mean, I think Braden Holtby is entitled to be in a good position to make the save, even though it's incidental contact. It's like Chabot was like in front of the crease, like stopped there, and then he bumped Holtby. It's kind of a tough one to go either way, but I do think at the end of the day they did make the right call. Then the Sens would get one that counts as 10:22 into the first period. Josh Norris, hence the title, would score, assisted by Brady Tkachuk, and that's his 14th of the year. And he's got that shot where he beats a goalie, kind of like 7-hole that one went, but he usually goes high glove, and they asked him about that actually in the intermission, if he's trying to change it up because a lot of goalies maybe are starting to catch on about him going high glove, and he just kind of played it off like, no, I mean, obviously Norris isn't going to give away his secrets, so of course I think that's just kind of a dumb question to even ask a player, because he's not going to give away his secrets. He wants to have as many secrets as he can, as many weapons in his arsenal to score on these goalies. And that was the case here, as it's 1-0 Sens. Then shortly after that, Olli Juolevi would score his second of the season, his second against the Sens, his second NHL goal. So all of his goals have come against Ottawa, assisted by Myers and Sutter. That was kind of a weird one. He just threw it to the net. I think Hogberg lost it in the traffic in front. It just went kind of clean in. And, I don't really know if there's much Hogberg could do about it, because I don't even know if he saw it. There were so many bodies in front of the net. There was one Vancouver guy and 2 Ottawa defenders in front. And just like that, the game's tied up at 1. Okay, so in the first intermission, there's that segment, yay or nay, that they have sometimes. I'm sure you guys know how that one works. And it was Shale Pounder, Bruce Garriock, and James Duthie was asking them the questions. And one of the questions was, is Josh Norris going to be a true number 1 center, an elite number 1 center someday? And Shale Pounder said no, she doesn't think he will be. And because of the fact that, he's lacking maybe a little bit of what those true number 1 guys have, like a Scheifele or a Bergeron or a Matthews or someone like that. And I don't necessarily disagree with her. And then Bruce Garriock, he was saying that, yes, I do think he can become a true number 1 center someday. And I don't necessarily disagree with him either. So what's my verdict on what Josh Norris's potential can be? Well, I personally think it's too early to tell, to be honest with you, and I could really see either one of those two things coming to fruition. Him maybe being a really solid second line center, but not quite having the, as much offense as you'd want out of an elite number 1 center. I think Josh Norris can become a true number 1 center, maybe not an elite one though, where he's putting up 80 points or something like that a year. I don't think he's going to be doing that. If Josh Norris can be a 60-plus point guy every year, in his prime anyways, and play really well against the other team's top lines defensively and shut them down and create points against the other team's top lines, I think the Sens and us as Sens fans should be really happy with what we got there. Okay, so we go to the second period, and it was tied up at 1 at the end of that first, obviously. And it would stay that way for a while, and the Sens would be putting the heat on Vancouver. I mean, the shots were 11-8 for Vancouver in the first. I thought it was a pretty evenly played first period. And Ottawa really came out in that second, though. I thought they dictated the play. They were the much better team than Vancouver. And the Chris Tierney, Connor Brown, and Ryan Dzingel line would have a great, excellent shift, hemming the Canucks in. The Sens would change on the fly. It's the second period, keep in mind, so it's the long change. And, obviously the Sens bench is close to the Canucks net. So it's easy for them to get these guys on the ice. They get their top line out there, the Batherson, Tkachuk Norris line. And that line would make the Canucks pay for being hemmed in that long. They would come on the ice. Drake Batherson snipes one. Batherson in that, mid to high slot area, if he gets the puck and you even give him a little bit of time, he's deadly. He's going to score. As soon as he got the puck, I was thinking, yeah, there's a good chance he's going to score here. Doesn't have like an Austin Matthews, Ovechkin type of release, but his release is more than adequate for me. And he scores there. Tkachuk gets another assist on that one too. It's 2-1 Ottawa at this point. And the Sens would have another shift like that shortly after they scored, hemming Vancouver in, which would eventually draw a penalty. The Sens would not score on that power play. But man, Ottawa had some really good grinding shifts in the Canucks zone. And they really wore the Canucks down, especially in that second period. We go to the third with Ottawa leading 2-1. And the Sens, I have a lot more confidence in them holding a lead. Like, I remember when they would have a lead, well, they wouldn't have a lead very often early on in the season. But when they did have a lead, I would always feel they're not going to hold on to this lead. And it's nothing's for certain, especially with a young team like the Sens. I don't ever think, oh, okay, this game's over. Like they're the early 2000s New Jersey Devils or something like that. But for the Sens, I feel a lot more confident that they can hang on to these leads, and they don't sit back and get really outplayed now when they have the lead. I find they go after teams a lot more. Did Vancouver have a couple of pretty good chances in that third period? Yeah, I thought they did. Hogberg played really well, by the way, too. I want to add in. He deserved to get the win here tonight, or last night. And I thought the Sens, though, didn't overly tax him. I think Vancouver only ended up with like 26 shots, so Ottawa only had 27, but keep in mind the Sens were leading most of the game, and they really held the Canucks offense at bay in this one, and that was a really good job by them to do that. Vancouver would pull the goalie with about 1:40 left, and they had a couple of chances there, but, the Sens did a pretty good job defending that 6-on-5. They didn't hit the empty net, but they did a good job of, disrupting Vancouver, chipping it out of the zone, forcing them to kind of regroup. And like I said, great job of that. And before you know it, the clock runs out. The Sens hang on and win 2-1 in regulation. If they lost this game, it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world, just because of the fact that, these are meaningless games anyways. I know a lot of people are saying, they're asking in the media, they're asking like the coaching staff or DJ Smith and the players, like, how big are these wins? Are these going to carry over into next season? First of all, winning's great, but no, these wins are not going to carry over into next season. Momentum doesn't carry over, in my opinion anyways, and I think this has been proven in the past, that momentum does not carry over from one season to another. And I don't think that's going to be the case for Ottawa. I think when they come into the training camp, I hope presumably in the fall, like a normal year, they're going to be, starting at ground zero, and they're going to have to create their own momentum. And will they be a much better team next year than they were this year? Yeah, I think they will, but it's not going to be because they won some games down the stretch, if you know what I mean. And, you look at LA last year, who finished the season before the pause with 7 straight wins, and they were really on a heater. And now this year, they're pretty average. They're not a bottom feeder, but they're just a few points ahead of Ottawa. And they have a few games in hand on the Sens, but the Kings are nowhere close to a playoff spot. Well, actually, LA is a little bit close to a playoff spot just because of how crappy that the 4th place and 5th place teams are. St. Louis and Arizona just seem destined on not wanting to make the playoffs. But I really don't think LA is going to capture that. But my point being, momentum does not carry over from one season to another. If the Sens do make the playoffs next year, I won't be looking back at this year and saying, wow, they really made the playoffs because they won some games down the stretch in a lost season. I'll be looking at it and saying the Sens made the playoffs because they played well in the 2021-2022 season. That would be the reason why they would make the playoffs. So some final thoughts on this one, on some certain individual efforts. I thought Erik Brannstrom, despite not picking up a point in this game, he was very noticeable, probably his best game in his career. I think it's safe to say he's had a few other pretty good ones this year. He was kind of quiet leading up to this, though, and I was thinking, he's getting some opportunities, but he's not really making the most of it. But I thought he looked really good. He drove the play. He just looked more like the guy you would want to have in your lineup if you're going to trade out Mark Stone for him. And Brandstrom, I thought, was really good. Like I said, he was controlling the play. He was in the offensive zone, keeping plays alive in the offensive zone. I think he was a big reason why the Sens had some really good cycle shifts in Vancouver's end. I know a lot of people have been complaining about Josh Brown, and myself too. I've been complaining about him as well this year. But Brown, I think he's been adequate so far in the games he's played here recently. He's been on a stretch of games. He's been in the lineup a lot now. I think like 6 or 7 in a row. And for Brown, I mean, if he can play this way, Ottawa, I don't know if Bernard Docker's going to be ready to come in full time next year. If he's on your third pair, Josh Brown, and, you don't overplay him too much, maybe not in the lineup every night, but if he plays even 50 to 60 games, I mean, I guess I don't have a problem with that as long as he's not playing too many minutes and not taking away minutes from guys who are playing better than him. But I think Brown's been okay enough throughout this stretch of games that he's played. That's it for this one, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below about everything that I've talked about and more, even if you have anything more you want to add to it. But like I said, let me know all that and more. Please like and subscribe and share this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.